The sumo deadlift is a variation of the conventional deadlift that involves a much wider stance. It is more technical and has four main steps: setup, slack pull, leg drive, and lockout. The setup involves the subject taking a wide stance behind the bar and gripping it about shoulder width apart. More specifically, the subject should be standing behind the bar, set legs at a wide stance to allow hips to drop into a position so that both femurs are about parallel with the ground and thighs are externally rotated. They should be done to as much as mobility allows without the knees caving in. Subjects should have their tibia almost touching the bar, about half an inch away. A common cue given is that the subject should be able to see their laces over the bar. Subjects should also keep chest pointed up. A popular cue for this is to imagine there is a glass wall in front of them. Have the chest up against it. Keep the lower back flat. Grip using one of four grips. Double overhand, which is when both hands are pronated. This grip is optimally used for lightweight. Mixed grip, which is when one hand is pronated and one hand is supinated. This is used for heavyweight. Hook grip, which is when thumbs are in between the bar and the first or second finger, which is better for heavyweight. Or use straps, which are again better for heavyweight. If the subject is seen from a bird's eye view, the absolute perfect sumo deadlift leverages and mobility would allow the subject to look like a straight line from knee to knee. Why is all this necessary? As can be seen by the first biomechanical principle, a wide stance will make deadlifts more stable because the center of gravity moves closer to the center of base of support. Additionally, as seen by the sixth biomechanical principle, the moment arm will be shortened to closer. The subject can get their hips to the bar by externally rotating hips and thus lift more weight, more efficiently through the use of centric force. The sumo deadlift is an example of a third-class lever. Therefore, it is important to get hips as close as can be to the bar so that pivot, load, and effort will be as close as possible to each other. The next main step in order to successfully execute the sumo deadlift is the slack pull. During the slack pull, the subject will breathe air into the stomach in order to stabilize core. Then, the subject will take the bend out of the bar and tighten up their body before bringing the weights off the ground. How exactly is this done? The subject will breathe air through the mouth into the stomach. Once the belly is filled, hold the air while flexing the abdominal muscles and core muscles. Maintain this position for the entire concentric of the deadlifts. In order to get the bend/whip out of the bar, the subject will lean back with the bar gripped and fall back slightly so that body weight is supported by the bar. In addition to this, the subject will tighten the entire body so it's stable and in position to begin the next step. Doing this puts the body and bar in optimal position to produce maximum force to lift the bar up. As can be seen by the fourth biomechanical principle, taking the bend/slack out of the bar requires significantly less force than lifting the weights themselves. Because of this, if the subject does not do a slack pull and instead goes right into leg drive, the weight transition between the bar bending and the weights themselves will prevent the subject from lifting the bar. The momentum gained from the slack pull will transition into the main concentric movement and the next phase of leg drive. The next step, leg drive, involves the subject trying to essentially stand up and get the bar off the ground. More specifically, the subject will drive legs into the ground using every muscle possible while continuing to keep the chest upwards. A commonly given cue is to imagine pressing away from the floor. Another tip, and this applies to general strength, is to use external force rather than internal force. This means focusing on getting the bar up rather than micro-thinking of each muscle and its contraction. As seen by the second and third biomechanical principles, pushing begins with the largest joints including hips, knees, the entire spine, and more. Additionally, almost every synovial joint in the body is involved with the sumo deadlift. This allows for production of maximum force and maximum velocity. Also, as can be seen by the fifth principle, pushing against the ground is the opposite direction of that of the applied force. The last step to the sumo deadlift is the lockout. This is when the subject fully straightens out the body. More specifically, the subject will maintain leg drive throughout the movement. Using glutes, hamstrings, spinal erectors, and more, the subject will perform a movement similar to a hip thrust by bringing their hips back into the standing position. This involves angular motion of the lumbar region of the spine. The biggest problem with my form on deadlifts is that my knees are caving in. This isn't really something that can be fixed overnight, and I just have to work on mobility to be able to better externally rotate my hips. as you can see, the blue line is where I'm currently at, and the green line would be much more optimal. And if it was at the green line, I'd be able to get my hips much closer to the bar, which it would shorten the momentum arm, and I would be able to get my back a bit further back, which would improve centric force and get my chest much more flat up against. And additionally, this is something I've been working on for a long time, because if you take a look at this old picture from the past, as you can see, my knees are significantly more caved in. And so really the only way to improve this is by working on mobility over time, because as you can see on this newer picture, which was taken much more recently, there is much less of knees caving in compared to the last picture. And in consequence, I'm able to keep a much shorter moment arm because my hips can get closer to the bar, I can keep more upright, and my thighs can be more externally rotated, unlike this picture with a very long moment arm.